Welcome to Unmuted Beyond the Good Girl. I'm Gillian Ray, your host, and this is the podcast where we speak the truth we were trained to hide. So I'm an ex-good girl, a reformed people pleaser, and someone who would previously have kept quiet to keep the peace. I also run a membership for women called the Speakeasy. It's a place where we can really open up about our experiences of being women in a world that really prefers us quiet, small, and agreeable. We've got a theme each month, and that theme is built around an archetype. So, a pattern that we all recognize, or a kind of character that, when you see someone, you go, oh, yeah, they're an absolute angel, or, the mother archetype, so a strong archetype. And last month, we talked about the rebel. I thought I'd bring some of what came up for us as a group and share with you more about this archetype and why we might resist it, and what happens when we actually let her have her say. So in the membership, we started the session by having a brainstorm about phrases that we associate with fire. Now, if you want to have a go at that now, you could pause me and grab a pen and paper and see how many you can come up with. Phrases that you associate with fire or flame. When we think about language and the way we talk, in reality, we talk so much in metaphors when we say something is something or compare something to another thing. For example, we might say something like, I feel the spark has gone, or now we're cooking with gas. So I like to do this exercise as I think it really shows us how much a particular symbol has seeped into our everyday language. Actually, even that phrase, seeped in, like that could be like a water phrase or a liquid phrase. We could even say how much of our thinking is illuminated by symbol. It's like the water we swim in. We don't always see it until we stop and look closer. And that's what archetypes are. They're part of the symbolic world. When we talk about the rebel, it's not a literal rebellion. Well, not always. It's a pattern of behavior or a type of energy that we recognize as rebel. Okay, how did you do on the fire phrases? Did you have any of these? You're playing with fire there. Girl, you are on fire today. It was a real trial by fire. The relationship burned hot and then fizzled out. If you can't stand the heat, stay out of the kitchen. I've got quite a lot of irons in the fire right now. My life is an absolute bin fire. And what about this one? I just want to burn it all down. If you resonate with that one, if it feels like, oh yeah, that's me, then the rebel archetype may be speaking to you. One of the things that came up for so many of us in the Speakeasy session was how many of us followed this pattern. Good girl, good girl, good girl. I am absolutely done. I want to burn my whole life down to the ground and start all over again. And as I mentioned in my episode on the death of the good girl, that's because the good girl isn't really about being good. It's about a performance of good. There's a book by Nick Hornby. He wrote about a boy, which was made into a film with Hugh Grant. It's called How to Be Good. Now, it's a really long time since I've read that book, about 25 years, so I might be getting this wrong. But how I recall it is that there was a female main character. She's married, she's a mum, she's also a GP, and she spent her whole life playing this good girl, good woman role. She was a good daughter, a good student, a good wife, a good mother, and now she's a GP. And in her mind, she's a good person. And in the book, she's having an affair. And even though she feels bad about it, she's kind of keeps justifying it as it's kind of balancing out for all the good she's done. But obviously, it wasn't really like that was real goodness. It was a performance of goodness because real goodness is like an overflow of our inner self. When we're fulfilled and joyful, we're good not because we have to be or we should be, but because it just flows out of us. So really in this book, this character, she was really much more performing duty and obligation, this sort of stage performance of good. And that's where the rebel comes in. The rebel is trying to tell us something. She's not trying to blow up our lives or burn it all down for no reason. She's trying to say something in the status quo is not quite right. So the rebel voice is the voice of protest. Culturally, rebels are everywhere. Civil rights leaders, suffragettes, punks, artists, musicians, whistleblowers. And very often those kind of characters, they can be sort of romanticized in a way, can't they? We can think of like the rebel musician, the leather jackets, and might have this image of a rebel in our head of what is that rebel energy. But very often when rebellion happens to us in our own life, when we're rebelling against the status quo, it doesn't come across as like a romanticized gesture. It comes across as we get labeled as difficult or angry or dangerous. And I think especially as women, this happens because, we're like, well, why are we not playing nice? Why are we not sticking with our usual politeness? And why are we causing a fuss? So at its core, the rebel is an archetype that shows up when something isn't working. So it's the part of us that says no before we even know what it is we want to say yes to sometimes. The next archetype we're actually looking at in our Speakeasy is actually the lover. And that's about desire, and that's about what it is we actually want. But before we can get to that, sometimes we need this rebel voice to say, no, this is not right. There's something not sitting well with me here. And we maybe need to investigate that a little bit. So we can meet our inner rebel by asking where she shows up, and like not just in these big political ways that we're talking about there with civil rights and stuff, although she may well do. We may be feeling the urge to rage against certain things in the political arena, but more so in our everyday lives. Where is the rebel showing up? So let's stop for a second and ask ourselves this. Is there somewhere right now that I'm feeling that pushback, that fire rising, that don't tell me what to do? To go back to that pattern that so many of our Speakeasy members identified, the one, good, 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 pass me the matches, that one. This is what happens when the rebel is suppressed, when we aren't listening to her voice, when we're ignoring the things that aren't quite right. What would she say if we let her speak? What would she tell us? When I ignored the voice telling me things weren't right for over a year, I ended up leaving my family and taking a job in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Maybe if I hadn't put up with the crap in that awful job for so long, I might have found a less extreme method of dealing with this feeling of I want out of here. But in the end, what I'd actually done was I was working this job in the UAE, and it was my first job after I got my teaching degree as well. And it was a really difficult school. It was not, there was no support. I mean, you think in like the UK, when you qualify, you get lots of support. There was nothing. In fact, I was the only British qualified teacher in the whole school, and they were expecting me to know all this stuff about the national curriculum, which I did do. There was no support for discipline. There was no real structures. And I don't know if it's so the other part of me, the bit that thinks it can fix everything, that I thought I had to stay. I don't know if it's a loyalty part. I do not know what part of me felt like I had to stay in this job. But there was this rebellion inside of me as well that was like that. I just was not listening to her. I wasn't listening to her. I was like just putting up with it. I was just going, well, I'll find a way around. I'll fix it. I'll come up with another system. I'll come up with another plan. And and then, I got a little bit miserable, and then I thought, I'll apply for another job. And I applied for a job in Dubai. And I didn't hear back from that. And then I just went back to getting on with the job. And then after like 8 months or whatever, I was just like, I can't take it anymore. And I'm just going to go anywhere. And so I applied for a job in Mongolia. So I really wanted to get far away as humanly possible. Now, I actually don't regret that, because Mongolia was an amazing place. It has a huge place in my heart now. I absolutely love it. But it did kind of signal a little bit of a pattern for me. A pattern of that putting up, and then just boom, everything's gone. And so when I found myself a few years later feeling this feeling again, like talking to a friend in Nepal and thinking, I think I'll go apply for a job in Nepal. What was going on there? Why was I doing that? I was, what is it I was really looking for? So yeah, when I found myself doing that again, I was like, okay, before we go full, I'm just going to disappear off the face of the earth again. Can we actually start to examine what it is that I'm actually looking for? What does this represent to me, rather than just go full whoosh? And also, I think I started listening earlier to the signs. And I was, by this time I was doing more journaling. I was spending a bit more time in self-development and meditation. And so I was able to hear that voice when it came up. I actually talk a bit more about that in my episode, No Point, No Choice, if you want to go and hear a bit more about that. So I won't go over it all again. But other than to say that, again, the reason I wasn't listening to that rebel voice was because I was trying to do the right thing. I wasn't listening to my own discomfort. So we also talked about quiet rebellion, which is kind of what I'm kind of guilty of, really. Not saying anything, not saying anything, not saying anything, and then just walking out, just being like, boom, I'm gone. Just the quiet exit, not telling anybody that I'm going to do it, and just disappearing. And well, I'm trying to change that now. And I mean, I have a podcast called Unmuted, and I'm on here talking all the time. So maybe I am getting better at talking about things rather than just being like, I'm going to make an exit. Yeah. So these are kind of like bits of the rebel archetype, the suppressed rebel or the quiet rebel. And then there's the other side of the rebel as well, which seems to be the bit of it that just rebels at everything for absolutely no apparent reason. It's burning bridges, just seems to be contrary for absolutely no reason, just because they want to be. I think sometimes that's kind of the rebel that we might think about when we think about sort of the teenage rebel, like, the rebel against the generation before. It's not, it doesn't even seem to be that they are rebelling against a specific thing. It's like they're rebelling against everything. And, that could be kind of like a rebel in its shadow as well. But again, maybe that is, again, with this rebel restlessness. It doesn't know what it wants, but it knows it doesn't want this. And so it's just rebelling against everything because it doesn't know exactly what it wants. So again, like a compass, the rebel is a compass. It's telling us something's wrong. So maybe the rebel doesn't always have to be a demolition crew. Maybe if we let her speak, we might see her as a voice who can point to the places we need change. When I'm journaling, I often identify these opposing voices and let them kind of argue it out on the page, almost kind of like I'm writing a script, really. So, maybe I'll even give them a bit of a strange name, like this is like Wild Gillian, and this is kind of like, Comfort Gillian, or whatever the two sort of opposing voices are. And then I kind of just like let them sort of talk to each other almost on the page. You don't even need to do that by writing. You can actually just do that by kind of listening to the voices and just kind of taking the time to listen to what one's saying and then the other one's saying. But I think writing it down really gives it that chance to, like, you can then just look back at it and see, well, what is it actually saying? And then you can start to interrogate it, ask some more questions. Now, when I say interrogate, like, I'm not going to get you to like shine a light on yourself and say, what's really going on here? Well, we're not talking about that kind of interrogation. I'm talking about actually asking with compassion, what is it that's going on? Curiosity. Always when we're exploring in the speakeasy, always when we're exploring these archetypes, we're exploring ourselves, and we're exploring our emotions, our feelings, how we react to things, it's always with compassion and with curiosity. Sometimes when we read it back, this rebel isn't actually demanding a huge change. She's just asking to be heard. So archetypes have shadow and light. So when an archetype's in shadow, as we've seen, we have this burn it all down. And I just won't agree with anything that you say. But an integrated rebel, a voice we recognize as ours and don't suppress, that can be the voice that fights against injustice, the voice that leads us to a new, better path, the voice that helps us to stay aligned with our values and our goals. So let me leave you today with a journal prompt, the rebel checkpoint. Where am I being too nice to be honest, but too resentful to stay quiet? Where am I being too nice to be honest, but too resentful to stay quiet? Where in my life do I need to let the rebel speak right now? What's she trying to tell me? Where in my life do I need to let the rebel speak right now? What's she trying to tell me? Rebel energy is not the enemy. It's an alert system. It tells us when something's too tight, too false, or is actually just dead. If we ignore it, we get stuck or we explode. But if we listen to it, we can use that energy to create something new. If you recognized yourself in any of this that I've been talking about today and you think you'd enjoy these type of monthly archetype discussions, along with lots of other women exploring going beyond the good girl, you are very welcome in the Speakeasy. You would be assured of a very warm welcome. We also have coaching circles. I am, in case I forgot to mention it, I am a certified coach. I give you journaling tools that can help you really shift things that feel stuck. So yeah, if that's interesting to you, it's still only £35, which is my founder's rate. And this month, as I said earlier, we're actually talking about the lover archetype, which I think has been really good so far. We already had an amazing, powerful session this morning, actually, about loving our own bodies. And next month, we're going to be looking at the huntress archetype, and I've got some great sessions planned for that as well. Anyway, the link's in the show notes, or you could message me for more information. I really do hope you found something helpful in this episode today. Next week, I have another great guest for you. She's talking about growing up in Northern Ireland, the power of wonder, and about dancing with life. So join me next week to talk to Robin Harris. Okay, this is where I stop talking, but the conversation continues in the Speakeasy. Till next time.